Women who left good men. Why do you regret your decision? Story 1. I left Evan because he was too safe. He packed my lunch with little notes like, proud of you, and remembered my mom's birthday without Facebook. My friends called him a golden retriever in human form, and I laughed like it was cute, but also embarrassing. I wanted someone who made my heart race, not someone who asked if my car needed an oil change. Then I met Marco. Tattoos, unpredictable, always busy, always making me chase. The first time he ignored me for 2 days, I told myself it meant he was intense. Evan never made me chase. He made me feel chosen, and I mistook that for boredom. 3 months after I moved out, my AC died in July. I texted Marco. No answer. I texted Evan because I was desperate. He showed up in 20 minutes with a portable unit and a bag of ice. No attitude, no lecture. He just set it up and said, "You okay?" That's the moment it hit me. I didn't leave a good man. I left the only man who made my life lighter. 2 weeks later, I saw him at the grocery store with a woman laughing at his stupid joke in the produce aisle, like it was the funniest thing in the world. He looked relaxed, like he wasn't bracing for me anymore. I cried in my car for an hour, not because I missed him, because I finally understood what I'd thrown away, and I couldn't undo it. Story 2. I broke up with Noah because he didn't challenge me. Translation: he didn't argue. He listened. He would actually pause mid-sentence and go, "Help me understand what you mean." My sister said, "That's husband material." I rolled my eyes and told her I wasn't trying to marry a therapist. I wanted fireworks. I wanted that movie feeling. So when my coworker Liam started flirting, big gestures, late-night texts, jealous little comments, I ate it up. I told myself Noah was holding me back from passion. Within a month, Liam was policing my clothes. "You're wearing that?" Then it was my friends. "Why do you need girls' night?" The first time he grabbed my wrist during a fight, he apologized so hard I convinced myself it was love. The regret didn't come as heartbreak. It came as silence. Noah used to send me memes at lunch. He used to check the weather before my commute. He used to notice when I was anxious before I even spoke. With Liam, my phone was either exploding with drama or dead. And I realized the challenge I wanted was just chaos. 6 months later, Noah emailed me. Not to get back together. To tell me my grandma's old ring, the one I'd misplaced, was in a box of my stuff and he didn't want it lost. He mailed it, wrapped carefully with a note. "I'm glad you have this. It matters." I stared at that note for a long time because it wasn't romantic. It was decent. And I had traded decent for danger like an idiot. Story 3. I left my good man because of social media. I'm not proud of it, but it's true. Ben wasn't flashy. He didn't post couple photos. He didn't comment hearts on my selfies. He loved me in real life. Like cooking dinner while I showered. Like leaving my favorite tea on the counter when I was sick. But online, it looked like I was dating air. Then I started following all these women who preached, if he wanted to, he would. They'd post screenshots of their boyfriends sending flowers at work, surprising them with trips, writing paragraphs under their photos. The comments were always, "Don't settle." I started feeling like Ben's quiet love was proof he didn't care enough. One night I picked a fight over something stupid. He didn't show me off. He looked hurt and said, "I'm with you every day." "Isn't that showing you?" I said. "It's not enough." And I meant it in the moment. I thought I deserved more. So I left. And immediately the internet clapped. My friends said I was choosing myself. I went on dates with guys who were great at captions and terrible at eye contact. One guy posted me on his story on date 2, and then asked if I could split the bill because equality. 3 months after the breakup, my dad had a health scare. I was in the hospital hallway shaking, and I realized my entire support system had been bent. Not the algorithm, not the comments, not the men who knew angles better than empathy. I looked at my empty notifications and thought, I really left the man who would have been here without being asked. That regret is heavy because I can't filter it. I can't edit it. I can only live with it. Story 4. I left Daniel because he didn't match my ambition. He was a high school teacher. I was in finance. My friends were climbing ladders, talking about bonuses and networking events, and Daniel was talking about lesson plans and kids who finally learned to read. He'd come home exhausted and happy, like his day mattered. I convinced myself I needed someone at my level. That phrase makes me nauseous now. I broke up with him the week I got promoted. I expected him to fight for me, to beg, to make a big speech. He just nodded, eyes red, and said, "I hope you get everything you want." I started dating a guy named Ryan, another finance guy. Same hours, same ambition, same obsession with appearing successful. We looked great on paper. We also never laughed. Our conversations were like meetings. When I got stressed, he'd say, "That's the job." Like stress was a personality trait. A year later, I hit a wall. panic attacks, insomnia, the whole thing. I went to therapy, and the therapist asked, "When did you last feel safe?" My brain immediately showed me Daniel's apartment. Warm light, pasta boiling, him humming off key while grading papers. No performance, no scoreboard, just peace. I ran into him by accident at a bookstore. He was buying children's books and a cheap Christmas ornament. He looked healthier. He smiled politely like I was a stranger who'd once known him. I tried to make conversation and blurted, "I think about you a lot," he said softly. "I don't. Not anymore." That sentence didn't hurt because it was cruel. It hurt because it was honest and because I deserved it. Story 5. I left Chris because he was too kind during my worst. That sounds insane, but hear me out. I was used to love feeling like a test. My dad was the type who praised you only when you performed. My ex before Chris was hot and cold, always making me prove I was worth staying. So when Chris came along and loved me without conditions, it felt suspicious, like a trap. He'd say things like, "We can work through this," instead of, "You're too much." He didn't punish me for being human. And my nervous system didn't know what to do with that. So I sabotaged it. I picked fights. I accused him of not caring enough because he didn't yell back. I told myself he was boring, but really I was addicted to adrenaline. Then I cheated. Not because I wanted the other guy, because I wanted to blow up the relationship before Chris could leave me first. I wanted control. When I confessed, Chris didn't scream. He just sat down, put his face in his hands and whispered, "I would have chosen you every time." I expected him to hate me. Instead, he just let go. He moved out quietly. No smear campaign, no revenge, no drama. Just a clean exit I didn't deserve. My regret isn't, I miss him. My regret is realizing I finally met a man who could have helped me heal. And I used him like a punching bag for wounds he didn't give me. The worst part? A year later, I'm the one doing the work. Therapy, boundaries, learning peace. And I'm doing it alone, because I burned down the only safe place I'd ever had. Story 6. I left Adam because he was predictable. He paid bills on time, texted when he was running late, and never flirted with anyone in front of me to keep me on my toes. My friends said I was lucky. I heard settling. Then I met Jace at a party. Loud laugh, quick charm, the kind of guy who says your name like it's a secret. With him, everything was a rush. Late nights, spontaneous trips, dramatic apologies. Adam felt like a calendar. Jace felt like a movie. The regret hit me in the most boring way possible. My car wouldn't start at 6:40 a.m. on a freezing morning. I called Jace. He didn't pick up. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Emergency." Nothing. I stared at my phone and realized Adam would have already been outside with jumper cables before the second ring. He would have brought a coffee. He would have said, "You're okay," and meant it. Instead, I ended up calling roadside assistance and crying on the curb because it wasn't really about the car. It was about the fact I traded reliable love for unreliable attention. 2 weeks later, I saw Adam at a cafe with someone else. She leaned into him while he talked, like she trusted every word. He looked calmer, like he didn't have to prove he was enough anymore. I walked home feeling sick because I finally understood. I didn't leave because he lacked something. I left because I couldn't recognize peace as love. Story 7. I broke up with Ben because everyone called him husband material, and it made me panic. He wanted a future, a real one. Holidays, family dinners, a dog, the whole thing. And my brain interpreted commitment as a cage. So I did what I always did. I found a reason. I told him he was too nice. I said I needed space. I made it sound mature. Then I dated a guy who treated me like I was optional. And somehow I worked harder for that relationship than I ever worked for Ben. I became the kind of woman I didn't even respect, checking my phone every 5 minutes, rewriting texts to sound cool, pretending I didn't care. One night, I got sick. Like fever, shaking, can't stand up sick. I texted the new guy. "Can you bring medicine?" He replied, "Can't. Busy." I lay there staring at the ceiling and thought about Ben. About how he used to keep my favorite soup stock just in case. About how he'd tuck a blanket around me even if I fell asleep on the couch. He didn't do those things to earn points. He did them because he loved me. I tried to call Ben the next day. He didn't answer. I found out later he was engaged. I saw the announcement online and it wasn't flashy. It was simple. 2 happy people. A ring. A caption. Easy, safe, home. I realized my regret wasn't romantic jealousy. It was grief. I finally wanted the stability I ran from after I taught the stable man how to live without me. Story 8. I left Carlos because he didn't push me. He was the kind of man who'd say, "If you're tired, rest." And I thought that meant he didn't believe in me. I wanted someone who'd hype me like an influencer's boyfriend. Big speeches, huge energy, always grinding. So when I met Nate, who talked in slogans and called everything a hustle, I thought I'd upgraded. Nate pushed me. All right. He pushed me until I was constantly exhausted. He pushed me to cut off friends who weren't ambitious. He pushed me to work weekends. He pushed me to be a different person. The regret didn't arrive in one dramatic scene. It arrived in small humiliations. Nate laughing when I cried. Nate saying, "You're being emotional," like it was a disease. Nate making me feel guilty for wanting a quiet night. Then my mom had surgery. I was terrified. I called Nate, hoping he'd just show up. He said, "That's life. You'll be fine." That night, my mom asked, "Where's Carlos?" He always brought flowers. I wanted to disappear. Because she was right. Carlos always showed up. Not with speeches. With presence. I messaged Carlos a week later, "I'm sorry. I miss you. I think I made a mistake." He replied politely, "I hope your mom recovers well. Take care." No anger. No begging. Just a door closed gently. And honestly, that was the most Carlos thing ever. Story 9. I left my good man because I thought love should feel like butterflies. With Ryan, it felt like breathing. Comfortable, steady, calm. And I convinced myself calm meant I wasn't in love enough. So I chased butterflies. I chased the stomach drop feeling. I chased the highs. And I got them. Followed by lows so deep I started losing myself. Ryan never yelled. The new guy did. Ryan never made me feel ugly. The new guy criticized my laugh, my clothes, my weight, then kissed me like he'd done me a favor. I stayed longer than I should have, because part of me felt like leaving would mean admitting Ryan was right about what I deserved. The regret hit at my cousin's wedding. I went alone, pretending I was independent. Everyone else had partners. I watched couples slow dance and felt this sharp, stupid ache. Then the bride's father gave a speech and said, "The greatest love isn't fireworks. It's someone choosing you on ordinary days." I almost laughed because it felt like the universe was mocking me. After the wedding, I drove past the little park where Ryan proposed we move in together. I remembered his voice. "No pressure. I just want to build something with you." I parked, cried, and realized something brutal. Butterflies weren't love. Butterflies were anxiety. And Ryan was the first man who didn't make me anxious. So my brain labeled him wrong. Story 10. I left Sam because he never made me jealous. That sounds toxic because it is. But I was used to relationships being a competition. Who cares less? Who has the upper hand? Who can win the argument? Sam didn't play. He'd say things like, "I'm on your team." I didn't know how to act with someone who didn't fight dirty, so I started feeling bored. Like there was no adrenaline. Then I met a guy who loved making me jealous. He'd mention other women casually, follow new girls online right after arguments, disappear for hours, then come back like nothing happened. It lit me up. I mistook that nausea for passion. One night, I found myself scrolling through his likes at 2 a.m., heart pounding, stomach twisting. And I suddenly remembered Sam sitting across from me at dinner, fully present, phone face down, asking about my day like it mattered. I texted Sam the next morning, "Do you ever think about us?" He replied, "Sometimes, but I'm doing better now." That sentence punched the air out of me. Because my regret wasn't just losing him. It was realizing I trained myself to crave emotional instability. And when a genuinely good man offered safety, I called it boring and threw it away. Now, when things are quiet, I don't assume it's empty. I assume it's what I used to ruin. Story 12. I dumped Aaron because he wasn't romantic. He didn't post long captions, didn't buy roses every week, didn't plan surprise weekends. But he did things that made my life easier. Fixed my leaky sink, packed snacks for my long shifts, kept an umbrella in his trunk for your random weather moods. My friends said, "That's not romance, that's being a dad," and I let that poison in. So I left for a guy who looked romantic. Candles, poems, big gestures, everyone applauded. And for a month I felt like the main character. Then the gestures stopped. Not slowly, like a switch flipped. Suddenly he was busy. Suddenly I was too needy. The same hands that once held my face gently started pushing my feelings away like they were annoying. The regret showed up the day my tire blew on the highway. I called the romantic guy. He said, "Babe, I'm in the middle of something." I called Aaron without thinking. Pure panic. He answered on the first ring and said, "Where are you? Turn on your hazards. Stay in the car." He arrived in 20 minutes, hair messy, wearing the hoodie I used to steal. He changed my tire like it was nothing, then handed me a bottle of water and checked my hands for shaking. I whispered, "I'm sorry." He nodded once and said, "I know." That "I know" was worse than yelling. Because he knew I'd only realized what romance actually was after I got scared and lonely. Story 13. I left Jason because he wasn't exciting. He worked, came home, cooked dinner with me, watched dumb shows. He never made me guess where I stood. He never made me compete. And I hated that part of myself, but I also craved the thrill of being wanted in a way that felt urgent. So when my old flame messaged me, "Still think about you sometimes," I spiraled. I told myself I deserved closure. I told myself Jason would never understand my depth. I told myself 100 lies to justify one selfish decision. I left. My old flame gave me exactly what he gave me years ago: attention in bursts, affection with strings, and excuses dressed as charm. I kept waiting for the spark to turn into stability. It never did. Then one day my younger brother called me crying. He'd gotten into trouble. I drove to pick him up, heart pounding, hands sweaty, and all I could think was, Jason would know what to say right now. Jason used to be my calm. After I got my brother home, I sat in my car outside my apartment and realized I'd built my life around a man who didn't tremble at responsibility, and I replaced him with a man who trembled at the word commitment. I didn't regret leaving Jason because I was lonely. I regretted it because I finally saw how rare it is to find someone who makes your worst days feel survivable. Story 14. I left Theo because he loved me like a routine. And I thought routine meant he didn't desire me. Theo's affection was consistent. Kiss goodbye, check-in texts, small surprises like my favorite chocolate because you looked stressed yesterday. But he wasn't jealous. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't act like losing me would destroy him. He acted like loving me was normal. So when I got attention from a guy at the gym who looked at me like I was a prize, I got addicted. Compliments, flirting, the whole sparkly performance. I told myself Theo had stopped trying. I ended it with Theo in a restaurant. He didn't beg. He just stared at the table for a long time and said, "I thought we were building something." I walked out feeling powerful. 2 months later, the gym guy ghosted me after we hooked up. Just vanished. And suddenly all that "I'm a prize" energy disappeared, leaving me with the cold reality. I wasn't special to him. I was available. I ran into Theo at a mutual friend's party. He looked great. Different haircut, healthier, laughing with people. I tried to talk to him like we could rewind. He was polite but distant. Then he said, "I'm dating someone who doesn't need chaos to feel loved." I felt my face burn. Because he wasn't insulting me. He was describing me accurately. I realized I didn't leave because he wasn't trying. I left because he didn't perform love. And when the performance ended with the other guy, I finally understood what Theo's steady love had been worth. Story 15. I left Nate because he was too good. That was literally the phrase I used. Too good. As if kindness is a flaw. Nate noticed things. Like when I got quiet in crowds. Like when my shoulders tensed before I said I was fine. He'd pull me close and whisper, "We can leave whenever you want." But I grew up in a home where love came with conditions. If someone was kind to me, my brain automatically asked, what do they want? Nate wanted nothing except me. And instead of feeling safe, I felt suspicious. So I manufactured reasons. He was clingy, he was boring, he didn't challenge me, he didn't have enough edge. I broke his heart and told myself it was right. Then I dated men with edge. And the edge cut me every time. The regret hit on a random Wednesday when my paycheck got delayed and my landlord threatened a late fee. I panicked. I spiraled. I called the guy I was dating then, and he laughed like it was funny. Figure it out. And in that moment, I remembered Nate quietly setting up an emergency fund spreadsheet with me months earlier because he said, "I never want you to feel scared alone." I sat on my kitchen floor and cried because I finally understood I didn't leave a good man. I left the kind of man people search for their whole lives. When I messaged Nate to apologize, he replied, "Thank you for saying that. I've forgiven you, but I'm not available anymore." That's the part that still stings. Not that he moved on. He should have. It's that I became the type of woman who only recognized love after it was gone. Story 16. I left Owen because he didn't spoil me. He wasn't cheap. He just wasn't showy. He'd rather pay off debt, plan for a house, fix things himself. Meanwhile, my feed was full of women getting surprise trips and designer bags, and I started feeling like Owen's love was invisible. So when I met a guy who showered me with gifts, I thought, finally, someone who knows my worth. He bought me earrings on date 2, a weekend getaway on date 4. My friends were impressed. I was intoxicated. Then the invoice came, just not in money. He started reminding me, after everything I do for you, when I didn't answer fast enough. He'd sulk if I went out without him. He once said, smiling, "You wouldn't want to disappoint someone who treats you this well." I realized the gifts weren't gifts. They were anchors. The regret hit when my laptop died right before a deadline. Owen would have been on YouTube, tools out, trying to save it. The gift guy just shrugged and said, "Buy a new one," like my panic was an inconvenience. I called Owen to ask who he used for repairs. He gave me the number, then paused and said, Are you okay? Not, where have you been? Not, is he treating you right? Just concern. I hung up and cried because I finally understood the difference between being purchased and being cared for. Story 17. I left Miles because he didn't plan dates. That was my official reason. Unofficially, I hated how he could read me. Miles didn't do grand surprises, but he remembered details. My coffee order, the song that made me cry, the way I got quiet when my dad called. He'd say, "You're spiraling," gently, like he wasn't afraid of my emotions. And that made me feel exposed. I wanted someone who didn't see through me. So I chose a man who adored my surface. He took me to fancy places, posted pictures, called me wifey in public. At home, he didn't ask a single question that required a real answer. If I cried, he'd go, "Babe, don't ruin the vibe." One night, I had a full panic attack in the kitchen. Hands numb, chest tight, convinced I was dying. He stood there frozen and said, "Can you not? I've had a long day." I remembered Miles sitting on the bathroom floor with me once, breathing slowly so I'd match him. "Look at me," he said then. "You're safe?" That's when regret turned physical, like nausea. Because I didn't leave because Miles wasn't enough. I left because he was the first person who made me feel truly seen, and I wasn't ready to be seen. Story 18. I left Eli because my mother didn't like him. Eli was kind, steady, quiet. The kind of man who'd bring my mom flowers and still get criticized for doing it wrong. My mom preferred men who were loud, confident, a little controlling, because she called it strong. She told me Eli was soft. She told me I could do better. And the worst part is, I believed her, because I wanted her approval more than I wanted my own peace. I broke Eli's heart with a speech I rehearsed like a business presentation. We're not aligned. He just stared at me and said, "Is this what you want, or what she wants?" I couldn't answer. A year later, I finally dated the kind of strong man my mom loved. My mom was thrilled. I was miserable. He talked over me, corrected me in public, treated my opinions like suggestions. When I complained, my mom said, "At least he's a real man." That sentence snapped something in me. I drove to my mom's house and told her, shaking, "You don't get to pick my pain anymore." Then I sat in my car afterward and realized Eli had never demanded I choose him. He just offered me a safe life. I searched his name online like a creep and found a wedding photo. He looked happy, truly happy. And I felt this ache that wasn't jealousy. It was the realization that I let someone else's voice drown out my own. And I paid for it with the best relationship I ever had. Story 19. I left Rowan because he didn't need me. He was emotionally stable, had friends, had hobbies. When we argued, he didn't crumble or beg. He'd say, "I love you, but I won't grovel." And I interpreted that as him not loving me enough. I wanted to feel indispensable. So I ended up with a man who needed me for everything. Rides, money, emotional labor, constant reassurance. At first, it felt flattering. He'd call me his whole world. I felt powerful. Finally, I mattered. Then it turned into a trap. If I was tired, he accused me of abandoning him. If I went out with friends, he got depressed. If I set a boundary, he said, "Wow, you're just like everyone else." My entire life became a hostage negotiation. The regret hit the night I got a promotion and told him, smiling. He stared at me and said, "So you're gonna get too good for me now?" I remembered Rowan taking me out to celebrate my smallest wins. I remembered him saying, "I'm proud of you," without making it about himself. I realized something ugly. I'd mistaken healthy independence for indifference. Rowan didn't need me to survive. He wanted me to share a life. And I traded that for someone who needed me like a life support machine. That's not love. That's a job you can never clock out of. Story 20. I left the good man because I thought I had time. Caleb and I were together 5 years. He was loyal, patient, the kind of partner who'd hold your hair back at 3 a.m. without acting like it was a chore. But I got restless. I started thinking in maybes. Maybe there's someone who fits me better. Maybe I'm missing out. Maybe I chose too soon. So I asked for a break. I even said the worst line, "If it's meant to be, we'll find our way back." Caleb didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, like he'd already been grieving me while I was still in the room. During the break, I went on dates. Nothing terrible, nothing magical, just options. And each option made me realize how rare Caleb's steady love was. I thought I could come back whenever I wanted, like a bookmark. 3 months later, I texted him, "Can we talk?" He replied, "I'm seeing someone." I didn't want to, but I had to move forward. I begged for coffee anyway. He agreed. When I saw him, he looked different, lighter. I started crying immediately and said, "I made a mistake." He didn't smile. He didn't punish me. He just said, "I know you did, but I can't be your safety net." Then he stood up to leave, and that's when the boom moment happened. His phone lit up on the table. A message preview from her. I'm outside, want me to bring you that soup you like? Caleb's eyes softened in a way I hadn't seen in months. He grabbed his coat and said quietly, "Take care of yourself." And I sat there shaking, because I finally understood. Good men don't wait forever. They heal. They get chosen by someone who doesn't gamble with their heart. Story 21. I left Dylan because he didn't lead. That was the phrase my friends used, and I borrowed it like it was mine. Dylan asked my opinion on everything. Where to eat, what movie, how to handle money, like my voice mattered. I grew up watching men dominate rooms, so partnership felt weak to me. I wanted a man who decided. So I dated a man who decided. He decided what we ate, who we saw, what I wore to events. He decided my job was too demanding. He decided my best friend was a bad influence. And somehow, because he spoke confidently, I called it security. The regret hit at a dinner party when he joked about me in front of everyone. She's cute, but she'd forget her head if it wasn't attached. People laughed politely. My stomach dropped. I looked around for someone, anyone, to meet my eyes and say, "That's not okay." Dylan would have shut that down instantly, not with a fight, but with respect. He would have squeezed my hand under the table and asked later, "Do you feel safe with me?" He cared about my dignity like it was precious. On the drive home, the decisive guy said, "Don't be so sensitive." And I realized I'd traded being consulted for being controlled. I texted Dylan the next day. He responded hours later, "I'm sorry you learned it this way. I hope you choose better for yourself." No invitation. No opening. Just a quiet goodbye I didn't earn. Story 22. I left Jordan because he didn't spark anymore. 7 years together will do that. Routine, groceries, laundry, sleepy kisses. He was still good to me. I just got addicted to attention. So when a coworker started flirting and made me feel 20 again, I convinced myself it was fate. I told Jordan I needed to find myself. He asked, voice shaking, "Is there someone else?" I lied. I hated myself for it, but I lied. My coworker was fun for exactly 8 weeks. Then he got bored. He started forgetting our plans. He'd reply late. He'd talk about other women like it was casual. And I realized I wasn't special. I was new. The regret hit on a Tuesday night when my sink flooded. Water everywhere, panic everywhere. I called the coworker. He said, "That's crazy," and kept talking about his gym session. I stood in my kitchen with towels piled up, remembering Jordan on his knees under that same sink, cursing softly, trying to fix it because he hated seeing me stressed. Jordan didn't just love me, he loved my life. He held the unglamorous pieces with me. I finally told Jordan the truth months later, expecting anger. He just stared and said, "I knew." Then he added quietly, "You weren't honest even when I gave you a soft place to land." That's what haunts me. I didn't just lose him. I became someone I don't respect. Story 23. I left Marcus because he didn't challenge me socially. He hated parties, hated networking, hated being fake. I'm outgoing. I wanted a +1 who could charm a room and make my friends say, "Wow." Marcus made me tea and listened when I vented. But he'd rather stay home and build a bookshelf than do a rooftop event. I started resenting him for not being my accessory. Then I dated a man who was perfect in public. Funny, confident, always the center. People loved him. I loved the way they looked at me with him. Behind closed doors, he was cold. He'd come home and drop the charm like a coat. If I wanted intimacy, he'd say, "You're being needy." If I wanted reassurance, he'd laugh. The regret arrived at my birthday dinner. My perfect man spent the whole evening flirting with the waitress and calling it a joke. Everyone still adored him. I smiled through it, humiliated. Later that night, I remembered my last birthday with Marcus. He cooked a whole meal himself, even though he was nervous. He put candles in a cheap grocery store cake and said, "I know it's not fancy, but I wanted you to feel love." I used to be embarrassed by that. Now I would give anything to go back. I messaged Marcus, apologizing, trying to explain. He replied, "I'm glad you're learning, but I'm not your training ground." That line broke me because it was true. I treated his quiet love like it was a draft version, until I met someone who reminded me what emptiness actually feels like. Story 24. I left Ethan because he didn't ignite me physically anymore. I told myself we'd become roommates. That's what the internet says when it wants you to blow up your life. If the spark is gone, the love is gone. Ethan was gentle. He never pressured me, never made me feel guilty. If I said I was tired, he'd say, "Sleep, babe," and I started interpreting his respect as lack of desire. So when someone flirted with me and made me feel wanted, I chased it. I thought I was reclaiming my femininity. I wasn't prepared for the cost. The constant comparison, the insecurity, the way the new guy's desire came paired with criticism. He wanted me until I wasn't perfectly on, perfectly hot, perfectly agreeable. Then his attention turned into punishment. The regret hit the night I got dressed up and he barely looked at me. I said, "Do you like it?" He shrugged. "It's fine." And my brain flashed to Ethan, eyes wide when I wore an old hoodie and no makeup, saying, "You're beautiful," like it was the simplest truth. I realized Ethan's desire wasn't loud, but it was safe. It didn't demand a performance. When I tried to come back, Ethan said something I'll never forget. "I loved you in quiet ways. You didn't hear it because you wanted noise." That's the sentence that follows me. Because he was right. Story 25. I left Connor because he was too patient. Every time I messed up, Connor was gentle. If I snapped, he'd give me space. If I cried, he'd hold me. He never weaponized my mistakes. And instead of feeling grateful, a part of me felt entitled. Like forgiveness would always be there. Then I met someone who didn't forgive. He'd go silent, punish me with distance, make me earn basic affection. And suddenly I was exhausted all the time, walking on eggshells, apologizing for breathing wrong. The regret hit at the worst possible moment. My dad died. The man I was with didn't come to the funeral. He said, "I don't do grief stuff. It's awkward." I stood in black clothes, surrounded by family, and felt so painfully alone I thought I'd split in half. Connor would have been there early, helping set up chairs, holding my hand through every handshake, making sure I ate something. Not because it was convenient, because he would have considered my pain his responsibility, in the most loving way. After the funeral, I called Connor, sobbing. He listened. He let me talk. Then he said quietly, "I'm so sorry. I wish I could carry this for you. But I can't be your partner anymore," I begged. He didn't yell. He didn't gloat. He just repeated, "I can't." That was my boom. Realizing the most patient man I'd ever known finally ran out of patience. Not in anger, but in self-respect. And I'm the one who taught him to. Story 26. I left Simon because he didn't match my pace. I'm the type who plans 5 years ahead. Color-coded calendars, goals, gym, career ladder. Simon was steady but slower. He liked weekends that didn't feel like a productivity contest. He'd say, "We have time." And it made me irrationally angry. So I chose a man who sprinted. Promotions, hustle culture, constant upgrades. He spoke in numbers. He loved that I was driven. I thought I'd found my equal. Then I got laid off. Not because I was lazy, because companies cut people like they cut costs. I called my new man in tears. He paused and said, "That's inconvenient. You need to fix it fast." Inconvenient. Like grief and fear are scheduling errors. I remembered Simon sitting beside me once when I failed an exam years ago. He'd wrapped me in a blanket and said, "You're not your worst day." I used to hear that as softness. Now I hear it as loyalty. When I asked my new man for a few days to breathe, he said, "I'm not here to babysit emotions." That night I realized my regret wasn't losing Simon's stability. It was losing the version of myself who felt safe enough to fail. Story 27. I left Luke because he didn't social climb. He was content with his friends, his job, his hobbies. Meanwhile, my circle was all about connections, appearances, power couples. Luke wasn't embarrassed by himself. I was embarrassed for him. And I hate admitting that. So I started dating a guy who looked impressive. Nice car, big talk, always networking. He introduced me as my girl, like I was part of his brand. People suddenly treated me differently. I thought it meant I'd leveled up. Then my grandma got sick. I spent nights at the hospital. I asked the impressive guy to come with me once, just for support. He sighed and said, "Babe, that's depressing. I've got an event." Luke would have been there in sweatpants, holding my coffee, asking my grandma to tell stories. He'd have done it without thinking it was beneath him. The regret hit when my grandma asked weakly, "Where's Luke?" He was kind. I couldn't even lie. I just held her hand and swallowed the truth like glass. After she passed, the impressive guy posted a selfie at a party with the caption, "Grind never stops." I stared at it and realized I'd traded a man with a heart for a man with a highlight reel. Story 28. I left Devin because he didn't post me. Devin was affectionate in private. Hand on my back, forehead kisses, slow dancing in the kitchen. But online? Nothing. No photos. No comments. My friends said, if he wanted to, he would. Influencer quotes ate my brain. I convinced myself I was being hidden. I confronted him. He said, "I'm not hiding you. I'm just not performing my relationship for strangers." I called it an excuse and left. I immediately started dating someone who posted everything. Flowers. Dates. My queen. People cheered. I felt validated. Then I learned what being posted actually meant. He used me for content. If I didn't smile, he'd say, "Babe, don't make it weird." If I wanted privacy, he'd accuse me of being ungrateful. He cared more about comments than my comfort. The regret hit when I saw Devin at a farmer's market holding hands with a woman who looked genuinely at peace. No phone out, no camera, just them. I realized I didn't want to be posted. I wanted to be cherished. And Devin did cherish me. I just couldn't feel it without an audience. Story 29. I left Henry because he didn't understand my trauma. He tried, actually. He read books I recommended. He asked questions. But he didn't have dramatic reactions. He didn't mirror my panic. When I spiraled, he stayed calm. My nervous system read calm as, he doesn't get it. So I chose someone who did get it. Someone as wounded as me. We bonded over pain. We called it depth. We called it soulmates. It was a disaster. We triggered each other constantly. Every disagreement became a catastrophe. Every insecurity became a fire. We weren't healing together. We were bleeding together. The regret hit when I had a nightmare and woke up shaking. Henry used to pull me close and whisper, "You're here. You're safe," my new partner snapped. "Can you stop? You're making me anxious." That's when it clicked. Henry's calm wasn't ignorance. It was regulation. He was offering me stability, something I'd never had, so it felt foreign. I left the man who could have helped me build peace, and I ran back to the chaos that felt like home. Story 30. I left Tom because he was too forgiving. Every time I was moody, he gave me grace. If I forgot something important, he didn't punish me. If I snapped, he'd say, "Talk to me. What's really going on?" I thought it meant he didn't have standards. I thought he'd always be there, no matter what. So when I met someone who withheld affection as discipline, I mistook it for strength. The first time I made a mistake with him, he didn't speak to me for 2 days. 2 days of silence in the same apartment. I tried apologizing. He smirked and said, "Now you'll remember." My stomach turned. And suddenly, Tom's forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was love with maturity. The regret hit like a boom when my best friend pulled me aside at a gathering and whispered, "You look scared all the time." I realized she was right. I had become smaller. I texted Tom, "I'm sorry. I understand now." He replied, "I'm glad you understand." I needed someone who appreciated kindness, not someone who mistook it for permission. That was the moment I knew. I didn't just lose a good man. I lost the life where I wasn't afraid. Story 31. I left Patrick because he wasn't alpha. God, even typing that makes me cringe. But that's what my friends fed me. Podcasts, reels, little quotes about masculine men and soft boys. Patrick was gentle. He asked how I felt. He listened without trying to win. Then I dated a guy who loved being alpha. He interrupted me constantly, decided everything, talked about women like they were puzzles to solve. At first it felt exciting, like I was being claimed. My friends were impressed. I confused their approval with happiness. The regret hit the day I got sick at his place and asked for water. He sighed like I was ruining his night, handed me a bottle without looking up from his phone and said, "Try not to be dramatic." Patrick would have made soup. He would have sat with me. He would have rubbed my back. Not as a performance, because he didn't know how to love any other way. I tried calling Patrick after a particularly ugly fight. He answered, heard my voice and said, "Are you safe?" I whispered yes, and he said, "Good. Then please stop calling me to rescue you from choices you keep making." That line was my boom. Not because it was mean, because it was true. I didn't leave a soft man. I left a man with empathy, and I traded it for power games I didn't even want. Story 32. I left Jonah because he didn't make me feel needed. Jonah had his life together. He cooked, cleaned, had a therapist, had friends. He didn't dump his emotional weight on me and call it intimacy. He'd tell me, "I want you, but I don't require you to function." And that terrified me, because I was addicted to being the fixer. Being needed made me feel valuable. So I dated a man who needed me like oxygen. At first it was flattering. He'd say, "You're the only person who understands me." He'd call me at work, crying, spiraling, demanding I talk him down. I mistook exhaustion for love. Then he started resenting me for having my own life. If I went out, he'd accuse me of abandoning him. If I slept early, he'd guilt-trip me. My entire existence became emotional CPR. The regret hit when I realized I couldn't breathe. I remember Jonah saying, "A relationship shouldn't feel like drowning with company." I texted Jonah at midnight. Just one line. "You were right." He replied, "I know. I hope you're okay." Not "come back." Not "I told you so." Just concern. That's the part that broke me. He cared without using it to pull me back. That's real love. And I didn't recognize it until I was trapped in the opposite. Story 33. I left Alex because he didn't keep up with my lifestyle. I liked nice dinners, weekend trips, new outfits. Alex wasn't broke. He just prioritized savings. He'd say, "We can do that, but let's plan it." I took it as him limiting me, like he was holding me back from a life I deserved. So I met a man who spent like a movie character. 5-star everything. Impulse trips. Designer bags. Just because I felt like I'd finally escaped a boring future. Then I found out how it was funded. Credit cards, debt, lies. The first time I questioned him, he snapped, "Do you want the lifestyle or not?" That sentence landed like ice. Because it wasn't love. It was a transaction. The regret hit when I opened my own bank app and realized I'd started spending recklessly too, trying to match his pace. Alex used to gently remind me, "Future you deserves peace." Future me did not have peace. I had anxiety and a man who called it negativity. I tried to apologize to Alex and he said, "I loved you, but you loved the idea of being rich more." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he'd seen a truth about me before I was brave enough to. Story 34. I left Cole because he didn't get jealous. He trusted me. Like, actually trusted me. He wasn't checking my phone, wasn't asking for my location, wasn't giving me little tests to prove loyalty. I told myself it meant he didn't care. So when I met a guy who got possessive fast, I mistook it for passion. He'd say, "I don't like other men looking at you," like it was romantic. My friends said, "He really wants you." I thought I'd found intensity. Then intensity turned into surveillance. He'd show up unannounced. He'd ask for proof. He'd accuse. If I laughed at a waiter's joke, he'd punish me with silence the entire ride home. The regret hit when I caught myself apologizing for existing. Cole used to say, "I'm proud to be with you," not "you belong to me." Big difference. I didn't understand it until I lived the difference. When I finally left the jealous guy, my hands were shaking. I called Cole out of habit. He answered, listened, then said quietly, "I can't be your exit plan." I cried harder at that than at any breakup, because it meant the person I treated as boring had learned self-respect by watching me waste his. Story 35. I left Ryan because he didn't fix my sadness. I was depressed, and instead of using it as a reason to get help, I used it as a reason to blame him. Ryan tried everything. Therapy suggestions, walks, routines, space, closeness. He'd say, "I love you, but I can't cure you." And I hated hearing that because I wanted love to be a magic trick. I wanted a man to make my pain vanish so I wouldn't have to face it. Then I met someone who promised he could. He called me his broken angel. He told me he'd save me. It sounded romantic. It felt like relief, until I realized saving came with control. He needed me fragile so he could feel powerful. If I had a good day, he'd get weirdly cold. If I started improving, he'd pick fights. The regret hit like a boom when I told him I'd booked therapy and he laughed. "Why would you need that when you have me?" I remembered Ryan celebrating the first time I admitted I needed help. He didn't want to be my savior. He wanted to be my partner. I left the man who loved my healing, and I chose the man who loved my wounds. That's the truth that still makes me ashamed, and that's why I regret it. Story 36. I left Gabriel because he didn't dream big enough. He worked a stable job, called his mom every Sunday, and talked about buying a modest house with a garden like it was the most exciting thing on earth. I wanted skyscrapers. I wanted more. My friends kept saying, "You're young. Don't settle." And I started hearing Gabriel's calm as a warning sign. Then I got an offer in another city. Higher pay, shiny title. Gabriel didn't stop me. He sat on the edge of our bed and said, "If you go, I'll miss you. If you stay, I'll support you. I'm not going to hold you hostage," and somehow that made me angrier. I wanted him to fight. I wanted drama that proved I mattered. I left anyway. The new city was loud and lonely. My apartment echoed. My coworkers were friendly but transactional. The guy I dated there loved ambition until I had a bad week. When I cried after a brutal meeting, he said, "You're not built for this." Then he rolled over and fell asleep. One night, I came home to a leaking ceiling, water dripping, buckets everywhere, panic rising. I sat on the floor and remembered Gabriel, kneeling beside a broken cabinet door, humming, making my home feel safe with his hands. I called him without thinking. He answered. I heard the pause when he recognized my voice. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I whispered. "I think I ruined everything." He was quiet for a second, then said, "I'm sorry you're hurting." I'm not angry anymore. That should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like the floor dropping out, because it meant he'd healed. Boom. In the silence, I heard a woman laugh in the background. Then Gabriel said softly, "I have to go. Take care of yourself." And I realized I didn't just leave a good man. I left the home he was trying to build, then showed up after someone else moved in.